I am very convinced that whoever created this controller was on crack. What's up everyone? We're talking about Nintendo controllers. Basically, as many may know, I am currently working on a video talking about Nintendo systems. Just a little update on that before we get into this. I decided I was going to split this video into two parts, talk about the classic era of Nintendo, classic, and the modern era of Nintendo. So basically, the classic era would be the NES to the GameCube, with like the Game Boy, Game Boy Advance, whatever in there. And then the modern era would be the DS through the Switch, or Switch 2, whatever the newest one is by the time that video comes out. But that's not the focus of this video. Today, we're going to be talking about, as I mentioned before, Nintendo controllers. There's plenty of them from throughout the years, so I thought it'd be kind of cool to kind of look back at them and see how they have evolved over the years. So obviously the first one we got is the NES controller. You know, everyone has seen this controller before. The nice like simple with the D-pad to start select A and B, and just the nice rectangular design. Honestly, like for a controller, this was a great one for Nintendo to start with, because as many know, the video game market in the West was starting to crash. So having a simple control design really led to this controller, or the system, being well received by the general public, making Nintendo the biggest gaming company in the West, or just anywhere. But a lot of people had problems with this controller. There was the fact that, you know, it's rigid, it's kind of sharp here. I don't have a problem with it. I don't grip this controller to the point where my fingers get hurt from holding it. But that was one of the biggest problems that people had with the controller. But Nintendo's solution to this was the Dogbone NES controller. I don't remember if this one came out before or after the Super Nintendo. If it came out before, you can obviously tell this was what inspired the Super Nintendo controller. But if it came out after, then obviously this was inspired by it. Basically, it solves the problem of having the rigid edges, and now it's smooth. Now it actually feels a lot better to hold. Same buttons as before. There's no shoulder buttons here. It's just like a nice design. I actually just recently got this one at a antique store in my town. I don't know if it works. I haven't tested it yet, but I'm gonna guess if it doesn't work, it'd be because of this right here. I'll have to try it out eventually, but even if it doesn't, it'd be kind of a good thing to have to like kind of showcase controllers if I need to. The NES basically had like two controllers that really defined it. Mostly it was this one, but this one was an alternative for those that are unable to handle the fact that it's a rectangle and that get little boo-boos on their fingers because of it. If you do, I don't understand how or why. Like, it's not that rough of edges. Like, I'm pushing down right now, and it doesn't hurt. You don't see marks. Okay, maybe you do, but that's besides the point. It doesn't hurt that much to hold unless you're, like, really gripping this thing. Moving forward, we're just gonna move these out of the way. The Super Nintendo controller. Honestly, this has to be one of my favorite Nintendo controllers. It's nice and simple. It's got the shoulder buttons, A, B, Y, X, start, select, and the D-pad. This is a great controller to have if you're like into 2D gaming. Even on the Switch or the SNES Classic, if you have like a way to use this controller for 2D games, I would really recommend it because this just feels so good to hold. Apparently mine is also really rattly. You know, it's just nice and simple. It's perfect for 2D games because you only need the D-pad and these buttons. Maybe you only need like Y and X. But like, especially for like Mario World, I'm sure this would be a great controller for Mario Wonder as well. I don't have the Nintendo Switch Online controllers, but just like based on how it feels to play and just like how I played the game, I used the D-pad on the Switch Pro controller and the Y and B buttons. It's also like, you know, it has a great design. It just feels super natural to hold. Just overall, it's greatly made. It feels nice. It doesn't feel cheap at all. The buttons are nice and responsive. I don't know. There's just not much else to say about it because at the end of the day, it's just the basic controller. But it just feels so good to hold. You'd have to use one yourself to understand. But yeah, the Super Nintendo controller, great controller. Probably one of the best ones Nintendo's made, and it still holds up really well today. But one that doesn't hold up well, you probably saw this at the beginning of the video, was the Nintendo 64 controller. What is this? This controller was designed for aliens. I'm not convinced a human could possibly use this. So, obviously, This controller was made with having 3D gaming in mind, and then like being able to play 2D games on it. Or if for some reason you want to, you could do 3D and 2D, but no buttons. I don't know there's a single game that uses this layout here, but maybe there is. Obviously, you know, we got the start button right here, and then the Z button back here. I don't even know why this is back there. Like, I guess it kind of makes sense because in Mario 64 you gotta hold that button down to do like long jumps and stuff. So it feels better than having to like push one of these buttons and then, you know, like that. But I don't know, this controller is so weird. It's really iconic, don't get me wrong, but it's just not super comfortable to hold. On top of that, it's the first Nintendo controller to have the joystick, but this thing feels super cheap. And if you remember, there's a minigame, I think it's like Tug of War or something, on Mario Party, the original. This thing was really infamous for giving kids like blisters on their fingers because they would go on the controller instead of, you know, doing like that. Everyone found out this was the fastest way to do it, and because of that, people would get blisters on their fingers. I didn't or on their hands. I didn't because I didn't do it for long enough, but that was a big thing back in the 90s. Nintendo, I think, got a lawsuit for it, and they had to issue kids gloves with the game or something so they don't get blisters on their fingers. But yeah, this is such a weird controller. You know, it doesn't have two joysticks. It has the, what do you want to call this? Like the C buttons, like for camera controls. I think that's what the C stands for. The camera controls with these 4 buttons instead of like having another joystick up here. So that was weird. The joystick feels really funky to use. I do like the little ridges in there though, so that you can like, you know, the 8 different directions or whatever. Also, this is kind of messy. Yuck. But besides that though, it feels like this thing's gonna fall off at any time. Like, it does not feel sturdy at all. I'm surprised it hasn't yet. But I do just remember, with the Super Nintendo, I forgot to mention a controller for it. The SNES mouse. Yeah, this is a controller I just got like a couple days ago. I was at the game store I usually go to, and my mom, she came with, and she like looked over at the Super Nintendo section and was like, "What's that?" Basically, it was Mario Paint with the Super Nintendo mouse and the Super Nintendo mouse pad. I don't have that over here, but it's basically just a plastic mouse pad with the Nintendo logo. But I was like, oh, that's actually kind of cool. And it feels really good, too. I don't even know why it feels so good. This isn't a button here, and there's no middle click. But, like, these buttons, they're just so satisfying to click. And then on the bottom here, we have, obviously, the little, like, mouse thingy on the bottom. I don't know what's called, the mouse ball, which apparently goes in if you have it upside down. But, yeah, like, I don't know many people that own one of these, let alone use one of these, but obviously, I think it's used for Mario Paint. I think maybe for the Sims game on the Super Nintendo. I think I heard something about that. This is such a weird controller to own. It's kind of like the dog bone controller in a way, where it's like, not many people have it. But this is especially weird just because it's a mouse for a Nintendo system. Like, who asked for this? No one. But it's cool to have, regardless. Moving on to, though, the what is often considered one of the best video game controllers that Nintendo's made. Super famous, especially with the Smash Bros. Community. The Nintendo GameCube controller. This thing is excellently crafted, okay? It kind of looks goofy, don't get me wrong. It looks super funny, just because, you know, that's just every Nintendo controller. But the GameCube controller just feels so nice to, like, hold, so nice to use, and, like, the, like, analog triggers here. I think this is the only Nintendo system with analog triggers. So, like, you know, there's that. So, like, if you're playing, like, Mario Sunshine, and you're using FLUDD, and you want to, like, adjust how much, like, water pressure you're using, you can do that. And it has a satisfying click when you, like, reach the bottom. And then, obviously, there's the Z, yeah, just the Z button up here, for some reason. And then, obviously, you know, we got the main, like, joystick, which feels a lot better to use than the Nintendo 64 one, because this one just feels cheap. This one feels like that, you know, they actually tried with it. And then we got, instead of the C button, the C buttons, we have the C stick here. It's a lot smaller, but it feels nice to use regardless, even though, like, it would have been better if there was, like, 2 of these instead of, like, one of the smaller ones, one of the bigger ones. Obviously, the D-pads here. I don't know many people that use this unless you're playing Game Boy games on your GameCube, which you're able to do, in case you didn't know, through the Game Boy player, but you do need the disc for that. And then just like having all the buttons revolved around A, you know, because in games that like require like running, usually it's like Y or X, and then you can do like Y and A, and then there's B down here. So if you want to just do B and A, you can do that. But especially for Smash Bros, this is a great controller to have because, you know, your smash attacks, if you want to like do air attacks or whatever, aerial attacks, you know, you could jump with Y, and then you could go like A and then like left or up or whatever, and then you can use those attacks, and then obviously, you know, you could just push B. I don't think there's any BAs, like combos or whatever. I'm sure there might be, but it's just a really greatly made controller. It just feels very natural to hold. And there's a reason why every Nintendo like console generation from the GameCube has some sort of way to use a GameCube controller. Like the Wii had the like at least for the original models, it had like the GameCube and the little GameCube slot on top, so you can like have your memory cards and your GameCube controllers, like you could plug it in there. So it's backwards compatible with the GameCube. And then for the Switch and Wii U, I'm pretty sure there was like the like a little accessory you could buy and plug in, like USB accessory, and then you can plug in your GameCube controllers. All that for good reason. This controller is just a really good one to use. There was actually another version of the GameCube controller that was released in the GameCube's life. I don't have it, but it's the Wavebird. It's basically this thing, except for its design is a little bit goofier. I think it's basically still the same though. It's a little chunkier, I'm pretty sure. And then it's basically just a wireless controller. Like you had to connect it into the thing. You gotta like, there's like a little dial up here, and you gotta like match the number up there to the one on the GameCube. And then I think basically from there, you're able to just like use the GameCube controller just wireless. But yeah, the GameCube controller is just a great controller to have. If you have a Switch and you want to buy the adapter and a GameCube controller, definitely go do that. I'm pretty sure Nintendo still makes like new GameCube controllers to this day, so you don't have to get a used one. You can get like a new one. I'm sure there's like the Smash Bros ones or whatever. I don't know if those are compatible with the GameCube, but I'm pretty sure they have the same port, so it might be. If you know, leave a comment down below for those that don't know, including myself. But yeah, the GameCube controller is just really well made. Another very well made one, the Nintendo Wii Remote. Man, I have so many memories with this thing. You know, Wii Sports, playing tennis, going bam, 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 like that. It's a very simple controller. Obviously the heavy influence of motion controls on it, and just like the simple way, like control method of A and B up here, and then 1 and 2 for like your 2D games if you want to do it on the side, and then the power button. Yeah, we got the Wii Motion Plus here. This one, basically just better motion controls or whatever. And then obviously we get the Wii Nunchuck, or the Wiimote Nunchuck. That was an accessory to make it so that you can play games without having to play it on the side. I much prefer doing it this way, because, you know, having the joystick on the Nunchuck is nice. And for games like Wii Sports, it's kind of required for at least one of the sports with boxing. You know, boom, boom. This isn't that responsive though, at least today. Maybe it's because of age, but the Nunchuck, I think it has motion control built inside of it, but it's just not as good as like the Wiimote. But yeah, the Wiimote is such an interesting controller because obviously it was built with having like everyone being able to easily understand it in mind. So like, you know, the motion controls on the like Wii menu, it was like you just point it like it's a TV remote. You just move it around and you could just see, or you could just like point where you want to use it. Obviously you had to use like the Wii, like the motion like detector, or the motion sensor bar to be able to use the Wii remote, but still, it's still really responsive. Even just the regular Wiimote without like the Wii Motion Plus, it's still really responsive to this day, as long as your Wii sensor bar isn't broken. The motion controls hold up well. They're not as good as like say the with the Switches maybe. Honestly, like sometimes the motion controls is better than like the gyro controls on the Switch, which is kind of weird. But a simple controller. Honestly, this is like one that I and many others grew up with, and you can plug in like a million things into this thing right here. The NES and SNES Classic controllers. Obviously, the nunchuck. There's like the Wii Classic remote. I think there was also like a Wii Pro controller that you can plug into here. It was basically just a Wii Classic remote, but more crazy. But I'm pretty sure you had to plug it in here. But yeah, this controller was, again, I don't think Nintendo would make a controller like this again, but it's still well made, at least for what the system was, because, you know, it has motion controls. It looks like a remote that you'd use on TV. It's just super easy to use. There's not much else to say about this one. Just a great controller all around. But then we go to another, what the fuck is this? With Nintendo controllers with the Wii U gamepad. Look at that. There's me. You can see me. Now you can see how I make these videos. I just put my phone on a tripod, and then I'm just right behind it, and I use the camera to see what I'm doing. So hopefully this works well. But the Wii U gamepad is a very interesting one. It's not a bad controller, don't get me wrong. But you know, the fact that the two joysticks are on top instead of like one up here, one down here, I get it. It kind of works with the how the Wii U, like just the size of this thing, and then obviously ABYX and the D-pad. But yeah, the Wii U gamepad, huge, biggest controller Nintendo's made. And the thing that really confused people as to what the Wii U is, this just looked like an accessory for the Wii, which is why people were like, why do I need to get a Wii U? And obviously, ultimately, this led to the Wii U not being well received and not selling well. Nintendo's biggest failure. But it's not a bad controller, like I said. You obviously have every control you need, or all the buttons you need. There's also a power button on here, so you could turn it on. But there's also the TV button down here, which is used so you could switch between if you want to have like your screen on the Wii U gamepad or on the screen and use the Wii U gamepad as a controller. Basically, this is like the Switch before the Switch, without the detachable Joy-Cons and it being, you know, just a controller. This is like basically the predecessor to the Switch Lite. At least that's what I like to look at it as, because you can play your games, like if someone's watching TV on the big screen, you can still play your games on this thing, which is still pretty cool. And then there's also the camera, which is used in games like Nintendo Land, you know, where you can just like look in the camera and be like, oh look, it's me. While others are like trying to chase you when you play Chase Mario. Honestly though, like, despite its size and just how goofy this is, it's still a great controller. Like, obviously, the Wii U also had a Pro controller, which is like kind of the predecessor to the Nintendo Switch Pro controller. But still, like, even if like I don't have a Pro controller for the Wii U, I just don't see a need to buy one. So like this works just fine. And then also on the Wii U, your Wii remotes work as well. So like, you know, if you got Wii remotes banging around, you can use those as well. But yeah, like, despite the fact that the Wii U is Nintendo's biggest failure, they still experimented a lot with this. I think there's like NFC readers inside this system as well, inside this controller as well for Amiibos, because that was a big marketing thing for Nintendo, Toys to Life. That was a big thing at the time, and Nintendo wanted to get into that with the Amiibo. Honestly, like, even despite how big it is, this thing is, like, how big and huge and bulky it is, it's still a great controller regardless. And, yeah, nothing special on the back. You know, gotta look at the back. There are the Z and ZR buttons, though. I think this is the first Nintendo controller to actually have these, besides the Wii Pro controller, whatever it's called. But yeah, still a phenomenal controller. Big, pretty good for what it is. And having a screen on it makes it a W. Just wish it was utilized more. The Nintendo Switch Joy-Con. These things are so tiny. They're so cute. Why are they so tiny though? They kind of suck to use. But yeah, as you know, the Joy-Con is the Nintendo Switch controller. It comes bundled in there. And then with it, you also get these cool little Joy-Con straps. Basically they act kind of like the Wiimote strap, so that you can just, you know, put them on your hand and whoa, it doesn't go flying. No more TVs are being broken. I think that's the only reason why Nintendo included these, because, you know, they don't want to be responsible for people throwing their controllers at the TV. But yeah, again, these have motion controls built into them, and then it has NFC reading, which is why these things are so expensive, just because of how much stuff is inside of these. And then there's also, I don't remember what this is called, but there's like a thing that can like, I remember it was like in one of the showcases for the Joy-Con, they could like identify if you're doing like rock or paper or scissors. I don't remember what it's called. Please let me know what it's called. It's some sort of like sensor though. I know that much. Maybe there's a camera in there. Nintendo, are you spying on me right now? Are you spying on me? Please don't be. Again, it has the ZL, ZR buttons. And then, if you don't want to like play them, like use like the Joy-Cons like this. There's also bundled inside of the Switch box is the Joy-Con grip. So, you know, there you go. For those of you that don't want to use your motion controls or whatever, or at least individual motion controls, there's this. It feels a bit better to hold, but it still feels kind of weird. But yeah, the Switch Pro controller. I don't know if my Switch is turning on. I hope I'm not. Oh, it's on. Oh. I don't want to take a million screenshots, so I'm not gonna push that button. But you know, again, we got the home button, the screenshot button. I don't want to take screenshots. And then this is what is weird to me. Just like the fact that it's not a D-pad and instead just 4 buttons. I guess because like they want to make the Switch controllers like you can play them basically as equals. I mean, it's a little off, but like, you know, you can use them basically the same way for multiplayer. They made it so that this wasn't a D-pad and instead was, you know, just like another AVYX. It's still weird to me though. I still think that the Wiimote was probably a bit better, at least in my opinion. But the Switch Pro or the Switch Joy-Cons are still great. I mean, there's a reason why Nintendo hasn't switched from the Switch Joy-Con. I mean, it's still the most recent system, so we can't say that yet. But like, there's a reason why they haven't really made like much alternatives besides the Pro controller, like over the Joy-Con. Like they didn't make another Wiimote or something because they know that this does well, despite the fact that it's small and like if you have bigger hands, maybe not me, but if you have slightly bigger hands than me, it can be kind of hard to use the Joy-Con, but it's still not bad at all. Again, Nintendo has been pretty good about their controllers over the years, but I still wish it was slightly bigger. I can say that about a lot of things. But for the final controller we have for today, we got the Pro Controller, arguably probably the best Nintendo controller, at least as of right now. Again, it's basically just like the Joy-Con, where it has all the built-in crap and whatever, like the NFC reader, the motion controls, gyroscope, whatever, except for this thing here, whatever it was called. But yeah, like, just how this thing is, like, put together, just where all the buttons are, it feels very nice to hold. And just, like, you know, there's only so much you could say about a controller, but, besides the fact that it has no analog triggers, that's the only thing that's, I guess, a downside compared to the GameCube controller. But, like, everything else about it, just where everything is, it's your standard video game controller. That's just what it feels like. But it's just great because of it, you know? You kind of, like, if you're a hardcore gamer, I'm not saying I am, but if you're a hardcore gamer, this is kind of what you're looking for. Simplistic, just everything is accessible at once, and you can just mash buttons like this. Yeah, you can go crazy with it. But the only thing I kind of noticed, it's not a big thing, but, like, it feels like the D-pad is, like, 4 different buttons, because, like, in the middle, it kind of, like, when you try clicking on the middle, it, like, goes one of the directions. I don't know, maybe I'm just going crazy. But yeah, like, the Switch Pro Controller, if you don't have one of these, what are you doing? Go get a Switch Pro Controller. Like, this is, like, the perfect way to play your Switch, if you're not playing, like, 1-2 Switch, or one of those games that kind of require the Joy-Con. Super Mario Party, I'm looking at you. Why do you have no, like, ability to use the Pro Controller? Anyways, that's every Nintendo controller. Nintendo has had quite a history with controllers. It's kind of crazy how, like, weird some of these controllers are. Looking at you, Nintendo 64 controller, and just how much they've evolved over the years. You know, Nintendo going from trying to compete for the best controllers, the best hardware, whatever, to getting creative with their stuff. So, like, we get to the point of, like, you know, having a fucking tablet as a controller. Who would have saw that coming? But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this one. I'm the biggest no on YouTube, Cristendo, signing off. Peace.